Howdy and welcome. Today we're going to be jumping into GameMaker Studio once more and working on getting our score to display on our screen. So where we last left off, we had just our tile set up. Our game can move around. We have the spawners working, but there's nothing else going on. Naturally, in any game, you'd want to see how high your score goes. We currently don't have this implemented. So let's go ahead and see how we can do that. Let's minimize our room editor, go over to our asset browser and jump into objects. We're going to want to create a brand new object. We're going to create a object. This is going to be our score object, obj_score. It is not going to have a sprite, but it will have two events. The create event, as we always have. In here, we're just going to initialize a value. So this will, let me zoom in for y'all. Initialize variable or values for score. And then we simply have score is equal to, oh no, score is a special keyword. The score is equal to 0. Starts off at 0, then we move on from there. So it's just giving you a warning, telling you that this is the only time that we use score. Let's go ahead and fix that. Let's create one new event, add event. Here we're going to create a draw event. The draw event is something new. Whenever you don't specify anything for the draw event simply has a draw_self that gets called. This just puts that sprite onto the canvas every frame. We want to do something more than just draw a sprite, because we don't want to have a sprite for every single score, because that is technically an infinite number of numbers. We don't want to need to figure that out. We instead are going to draw our text onto the canvas, but we need a little bit of information for us to even be able to do that. So this is going to draw score on canvas. Then inside here, let's zoom in a little bit more. We're going to need to figure out our X, Y values for where we want the text to appear. I'm going to make a variable. So what makes this different from whenever we generally just specify keywords or variables is that with here, using the var keyword makes it a temporary variable. It is created in this frame and deleted right afterwards. So that way it creates a brand new variable each time. So, and it lets us reference it slightly differently than it would otherwise. So we're going to have cx is equal to camera_get_view_x, and we're going to specify out of the camera that we are currently using, camera 0 specifically. With this, we're going to be able to now reference what is the X position of our camera. And do the exact same thing, but to grab the Y position of our camera. See Y and get view Y of the exact same camera. Now we know the X and Y positions of our current camera view. I also want to figure out my width, W or CW for camera width. And rather than getting the view, we're going to get view width of, again, camera 0. That way, if we were to change the camera sizes, our width variable would reflect the new size. Now that we have the variables, we can then figure out how to draw out our text. And so that's simply draw_text. We specify an X value. It's going to be CX, but that specifies our top left corner effectively. I need to shift it over closer to center. So I'm going to add to it half of our camera width. This should center us in our view for the X direction. I need to also specify our Y direction. That's going to be CY, but that will put it right at the top. I want it to be a little further down, so I'm going to do plus 30. This is just 30 pixels. You can change it up depending on your camera view, how you want it stuff to look. It'll change on that. And then I want to specify what actually gets displayed. This has to be a string, but I want to display our number for the score. So I'm going to have casting the score from a numeric data type into a string, so we're good to go. Close parentheses, semicolon. Now we're going to have the text drawn onto the screen. Let's go over to our room, place our score in here, just drop it anywhere. Cancel, I'm accidentally in the tiles layer. Let's go to the instance layer, place our score in here, we're good to go. Now, if I hit run, we should just have the 0 at the top of the screen. It's not going to look pretty. It's not going to look that good, but it'll be centered and follow our camera around ideally. There we go. We've got a tiny little 0 there. Nothing changes. We need to do a few modifications to get this to actually be functioning. So before we even get the numbers to change, let's clean this up so that way it looks good on our screen. This is where we're going to create a brand new font. Let's go over to fonts, right click on the font folder, create font. I'm just going to call this FNT_score. I'm not, you can mess around with this, make it far more detailed and whatnot, whatever you would like. I'm going to specify, I want this to be size 30. That way it looks much larger. It's good enough for me. I'm good to go. We've created our font. Let's go back to our score object. We can then reference in the drawing that we're going to draw. Let me zoom in for y'all. Draw underscore set underscore font and specify FNT_score. So that way it'll use the font we have just created. Let's run this again. And now see, it's much larger, nothing special, white text. You can change the text color to be something else that is pleasing to you. If you wanted to do that, you would simply do draw underscore set underscore color and specify whatever color is pleasing to you. It's C underscore, you have several options. I'm just gonna do fuchsia. Let's see if that looks any decent. Run this. There we go. It's not horrible. I'm not great with colors. Ideally, you'll put a little bit more thought and effort into this to make yours look far more pleasing than mine is. In fact, I think mine might actually look better in white. So I'm going to return this to white. We now have some basis for what we're going to do for our score, what we're going to do for our color. Now we just have the last part is actually getting the score to update. This is where we're going to go over to our enemy, object underscore enemy, and in our step event. That's where we kill the enemy. Here, we're going to want to figure out how to actually get points out of this event. So if we go over to our if statement, whenever we perform the kill or the instance destroy, before we do that, I want to, with open parentheses, obj_score. This will reference our score object. I want to do something with it. I want to grab its score and increase it to now be equal to, or to plus equals, adding to it some value. I could just put 5 and it'll update the value every time we get any kill, 5 points. But we have a large enemy, a medium enemy, and a small enemy. I want to have some variety. Small one should be worth less, the bigger one should be worth more. So let's go over into our create and update something. In our create event for our enemy object, I'm going to add a new variable, worth. The big one will be worth, I'm going to match it with its hit points. Its worth starts off as 10. This one, its worth is going to be set equal to the hit points again. It'll start off at 5. Actually, since I'm doing all of this at the same time and it's the same value, I can, as a shortcut, drop this down here. And now we're referencing the worth is simply equal to whatever hit points value it had from before. Now that we have a worth value for each of the different sizes, it just grabs whatever hit points that we initialized with. That's how much that enemy is worth. Let's go back down to our step event and simply do plus equals worth. Now, whenever we run this, every time we kill an enemy, we're going to get however many points it's worth based off of its starting health value. Now I move around. I can find an enemy eventually, shoot at it. Let's see if I made a mistake here. Plus equals, here, I forgot this part. While we reference worth, it is inside the width part. So with the error we made here, we referenced worth, but it's inside of its width block. The width block is looking specifically inside of object score, but that object does not have a variable called worth. We need to go back and reference our actual object. There's two ways we can do that. We can either do a variable called worth, we would update our create, or much more easily, we can say other.worth. This now references the other object. In our case, since we're inside of object score, other is actually the enemy object itself. This will pull its worth value. And so we're going to increase to our score, the value worth. Now let's save this, run it one more time. Now that we're correctly referencing the worth from the enemy object, it's not going to crash since it does exist. And once we get something, we should be able, there we go. Our score is updating. We can reference the variable correctly and our score is increasing. Once we get hit, it of course restarts and we're back to 0. So in this video, we now have we have created and updated a system to gather score for the points you've earned from killing the enemies based off of their starting health. If you have any questions or need anything from me, just let me know in class and I'll try to help you out. Otherwise, have a good one.